Hello everyone. Welcome to the solution of LeetCode problem 535 named Encode and Decode TinyURL. In this problem, we are given a URL. Suppose it is a long URL and we have to encode the long URL into the short URL. And similarly, we have to decode the short URL into the long URL. So here we have to implement the solution class. Here the solution constructor initializes the object of the system, and we have to write an encoding function which returns a tiny URL for a given long URL, and we have to define a decoding function which returns the original long URL for a given short URL. And it is guaranteed that the given short URL was encoded by the same object. Now, I hope you understood the problem statement. Now let's move on to the algorithm. Now, to understand the algorithm, we have taken a simple URL. Suppose this URL is the long URL and this URL is the short URL. So here, both of the URL will redirect you in the same website or in the same web pages, but the URL are different. This bottom URL is the shortened version of the top URL. So we can say that this is the encoded version of this URL. Similarly, if we decode this URL or this small URL, then we will find the original URL. Now, we can solve this kind of problem by using the map data structure. Suppose we are using two maps. One is for encoding and another is for decoding. Okay, good. Now suppose we have taken a base URL. Suppose here the base URL is this part, which is http://tinyurl.com. So when we will use the encoding, we will use this base URL, obviously. Now wait. Here, let's see. Suppose there are some other parts here after the base URL, which is 4E9IAK. Now, it doesn't necessary that we encode our URL by using this pattern. We can only simply use such as 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, how can the algorithm will work? Suppose here comes a word. Suppose let the word is cat. Now this cat word is present in the given input URL. So here we will simply encode the word cat with 1, and it is the encoding map. Simply we will do the reverse operation in the decoding map. Here the decoding map will contain the entry of 1 with cat. It is the decoding map. Now, suppose we have found another word into the URL. Suppose it is dog. Now, let's see. In our URL or in our encoding map, we have used the frequency 1 or the entry 1 for the word cat. So, we cannot use 1 to encode the word dog. So here, dog will be encoded by using the value 2. Similarly, the decoding array 2 will have entry the dog. Now, suppose our URL is something like this. Now, Suppose our URL has cat in them. So the base URL will become, let's erase some of the stuff here. Now the base URL or the encoded URL will become, because as tinyurl.com is the base URL here, and suppose we have cat, so it will become tinyurl.com/1. Now, similarly, when we decode it, we will replace this 1 by cat. This is how the encoding and decoding will solve the problem. More briefly, for each of the word presented in the URL, we will encode them by using the number, and similarly, this number will be used as the decoding key. And to encode and decode some of the URL will take roughly of big O and MAC lookup time. I hope you understood the algorithm. Now let's move on to the code. In this problem, the code is pretty simple. At first, we are given a function encode and decode, and we have to implement it. Now, we are using two maps, which is encoding map, decoding map, and a base URL. Now, for each of the long URL, we will check whether this long URL is presented in the encoding map till now or not. If it is not presented, that means we can entry this long URL into the encoding map. So the entry will be, similarly, the short URL will be base plus toString method, which is map of encoding plus 1, or the size of encoding map plus 1. Here, we will store the long URL as the key of the encoding map, and short URL will be the value. And for the decoding map, the short URL will be the key and long URL will be the value. And here in the encoding function, we will return the encoding map of long URL. Similarly, in the decoding function, we will return the short URLs entry in the decoding map. I hope you understood the code. Thank you everyone for watching this video. We will get back soon with another LeetCode solution.